I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the meeting to order. First order of business will be to approve the minutes. A motion to approve the minutes from the regular meeting held on January 14th, 2025. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by trustee Corr, seconded by deputy mayor Hay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Motion to approve the minutes from the executive session held on January 14th, 2025. Have a motion?
I'll move it.
Motion by deputy mayor Hay, seconded by trustee Kane. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. That brings us now to our department committee reports. We'll start off with the treasurer's report. And we are lucky to have Charles by Zoom. Charles, would you like to take it from here?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and good evening, everyone. Well, I'll continue the good news report is our revenues to date are well over $13 million. And we're tracking to exceed our budget for the year. As I've said in the past, the building department, the justice department have both already exceeded their budget, and the harbor and docks are projected to also beat their budget. So that's very good news.
So when you
Also,
say that, Charles, let me just interrupt you. So you're saying that the trend is for us to run a surplus at the end of the year?
Well, yeah, it all depends how much we spend, because what happens is some of the reason, some of the expenses are variable. So like with the justice court, we pay a percentage to the organization that collects the money. So that percent, as we collect more, they get a little bit more. But if we kept the expenses in line with the budget, we would. If you remember, we also expected to appropriate about $600,000 of fund balance to balance the budget.
Right.
To the extent our revenue is better, we'll need less money from fund balance. So in concept, yes. We just have to keep our eye on the ball with the expenses.
Gotcha. I didn't mean to interrupt. You can continue.
No, that's fine. Questions anytime. And I was just going to talk about the expenses. Generally, they are tracking our budget, and we're entering the last quarter of the year. And people take a look at what they haven't spent and they try to fully spend it. We have seen some overruns in insurance that'll eat up some of that extra revenue, and some other categories. But overall, I think, we're going to end up in good shape, and if we can maintain discipline, we will reduce the amount of fund balance we need at the end of the year to balance the budget. I also just wanted to point out that at this point in time, we have fully funded our retirement obligations as well as the LoSAP obligations, and also put in all the money into the reserves, which was about $400,000 that we anticipated in the budget. So the numbers that, when you look at the expenses, we've really taken care of the biggest expenses. So as we go forward, it's really the run rate, payroll, and other operating expenses. So overall, so far, so good.
Okay. Any questions for the treasurer?
One question, yes. So Justice Court is over on its revenues.
Yes.
It's about on track for expenses, correct? But
Yeah.
we know a lot of the expenses, a lot of the revenues that come to the Justice Court are generated by the police force, frankly. And the police force, if I'm reading this correctly, is roughly on budget for expenses as well? I think.
Yeah, roughly. I think we'll see. They always go a little over with the overtime. So with, the summer activity, although we have a good budget, there's always some unexpected overtime. We have a lot of events in the village that require overtime coverage. But for the most part, the police, for the controllable expenses, they are right on budget.
Okay, and
Why are we bringing up the overtime for the police under the treasurer's report? I'm just curious about that. Why is that being discussed in events in the summer under the treasurer's report?
I was just responding to the deputy mayor's question.
I understand.
Their expenses.
Typically, I can discuss that under the police report, why we have why our overtime budget is extended. It's because we're we've been unable to hire part-time police officers to fill that gap. We only have one part-time officer right now. So as the academy graduates officers and they become available, we fill those positions, but we just happen to be in a low spot now where we weren't able to fill those part-time positions. So then what happens is those full-time officers have to come in and do a double shift, and it variably ends to, leads to overtime.
My question is, we're still on track for budget, regardless of overtime straight
Right.
time for the police department. Through the 7, and what we've got is 7 months actual through December, right?
Yep.
Yep. I'm just saying we should look at both of those together when we look at the overage for the justice courts, because the justice court's expenses are driven in part by the police department. This year we had how many? 11, 10 TCOs that generated revenues. 2 years ago, we had very few. So it's a great thing, actually, that we're fully staffed from a budget perspective with the police department because it funds us.
Any other questions for the treasurer? No. I need a motion to accept the treasurer's report.
So,
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. That brings us to the department, the department reports, and I'll start off with the police department, fire department, and ambulance corps. The Sag Harbor Village Police Department had 660 calls for service in the month of January 2025. We had 6 aggravated unlicensed operation. We had 9 suspended registrations. We had 1 DWI refusal arrest. We had 1 peddling without a license. We had 9 motor vehicle accidents. We had year to date, we have 17 arrests, 1 DWI, and 124 uniform traffic summonses that were issued. Just on the police report, I don't know if you've read the papers, but we had a press conference in East Hampton Village that was hosted by Mayor Jerry Larson, and the discussion was about immigration and how the police force, the local police forces, will interact with the immigration population. And basically, we all have the same policy. And the policy is that we are not immigration. The local police force does not check immigration status when they're called to a scene. We're there to keep the peace and enforce the law. That doesn't mean that if federal agents come to Sag Harbor and they need assistance with apprehending somebody who's committed a crime and is wanted, that we won't assist them to keep the public peace. But we are not immigration. We are here to keep the peace and enforce the law. So the community, regardless of their immigration status, can call us and we'll be there. We will respond. So that concludes the police report. Brings us to the Sag Harbor Fire Department. In the month of January 2025, the members of the fire department volunteered for 1,805 man-hours. During the month, the officers and members of the department responded to 48 calls for service. These calls included 2 calls to neighboring districts for structure fires. There were 2 motor vehicle accidents and 1 incident lasting for over 7 hours. There was a couple of electrical and numerous false alarms. With the start of the new year, we continued our training with the majority of the members taking the PESH, bloodborne, and hazmat yearly refresher classes. And with the weather being colder than in past years, many of the parts of the water and the bays have had ice on them. The members took advantage of that, and we had an ice rescue drill. You might have seen them out on Windmill Beach. It was one of the really cold day they were out there doing a drill. A couple of the members entered the frigid waters to act as victims, while the others practiced their skills at rescuing them. Hopefully, we won't have to put these skills to use. And that's from our First Assistant Chief, Michael Geyer. Thank you, Chief. That brings us, that concludes the fire department. That brings us to the ambulance corps. In the month of January 2025, we had 45 emergency calls, 4 work nights, 3 meetings, 2 training sessions, for a total of 763 man-hours. Getting back to the police report, as I discussed with the treasurer, why that overtime line has, grown somewhat. We're still, by the way, I believe, what we budgeted for. We haven't gone over that. So we're still within the budget with that. I've sat down with Chief Drake. What we plan to do in this coming budget is to promote a lieutenant, somebody to lieutenant. Because as you know, Chief Drake was a lieutenant. He moved up to chief. So we have a void there at the lieutenant's position. And something that I talked to the chief about and I'm passionate about, and I would like to see, and he agrees, is that Sag Harbor we've had it in the past. We haven't had it for a long time. We have our own detective on force so that he can investigate and it closes that loop within the village. We don't have to go to another outside agency, the towns, to do that. We'll handle that ourselves. So that's in the budget also. Chief also wanted me to mention, we have the snowstorm coming up and snowstorms in the future. He wanted me to remind the residents in the village that not to park on the streets because of snow removal. And that is during the snowstorm, that is at least 2 inches of snowfall or greater. Or unless I declare a state of emergency, the times are from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. Unless there's a state of emergency, then you have to try to get those vehicles off the street so that the plows can clear the roads. So that concludes my reports. And that brings us to Deputy Mayor Hay for the Justice Court, Parks and Open Spaces, and the Planning Board.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll start with the Justice Court. It's February now, but we just received most of the year-end data as well for the Justice Court revenues. This ties back into our previous conversation. Gross revenues this year came in at $826,000, significantly higher than the prior years. Prior year gross revenue 23 was 519,488 for 22, 650 for 21. Net revenues will end up being, we don't have the last month's net revenue for December yet. It's going to be about $750,000. The treasurer's earlier comment, revenues are exceeding budget expenditures for the Justice Court, but as I mentioned before, a lot of the revenues are generated by the police force as well for the Justice Court. There's no real credit they get for that on the budget process per se, but we should be aware of that, acknowledge that. I think that the Justice Court, if I'm reading this right, revenues or budget for the year was roughly, expenses for the year is budgeted about $400,000. So that's their surplus for this year. Again, if we could use that to reduce or not tap into the reserves, great. To the extent that we have surpluses in the future, if we could use that for parking, that would be great too. For this, so that closes out kind of calendar year 24 for revenues, a much higher year than prior years. January 25, we have that report as well. From the Justice Court, 121 vehicle traffic law cases were started. There were a total of 122 cases opened. We also had 7 code violations and one other violation. Relatively light month as it is in the off season typically, but on par with prior years. That's it for the Justice Court. For the Parks and Open Space Advisory Committee, we're in ongoing discussions with Suffolk County as well as Southampton Town on County Road 79 project that Suffolk County is planning. So the Parks and Open Space Committee, the village, first of all, has hired a traffic consultant to advise us on this process. We've had a couple of meetings I've reported out on mostly last year, full Parks and Open Space Committee, county, town. And what the county had requested is that the engineers meet and work out some of the ideas and issues that we tossed about. And those meetings took place in December and January of this year. The county has done some work and submitted it back to our traffic consultant. And tomorrow night we'll have a post-act meeting to go over them. What they've done is done a drawing for parking along County Road 79 by Mash Park, as well as parallel parking there was their drawing, as well as we've asked them to really look at the bike paths through that intersection and improve the bike paths, bike traffic, bike lanes. And the intersection of Germain, Brick Hill Road, Main Street, County Road 79. And so we've got some preliminary drawings back from them as well. And so we're gonna have a meeting Thursday evening with our, those drawings were done by the county. They're very rough, preliminary design drawings with our village consultant to dig into a little deeper. We've got a lot of questions about the drawings, and we'll keep going with that. And once we get to some kind of point of where we're ready to make recommendations, hopefully in the next month or two to the full board, we'll bring in hopefully some drawings. We're going to ask our consultant to actually execute some of the requests we made to the county. They didn't quite. The county's been very cooperative in working with us and listening to our ideas, but they're not going as far as we'd like on things like the bike paths, and we're not completely comfortable with their recommendations on parallel parking on County Road 79 either. So we just want to explore that a little bit more before we come back to the board with a recommendation. And we want our consultant to weigh in on it for us as well. In addition, we expect to get a final report from our surveyor, H2M, for the open access points around the village that have been identified and surveyed tomorrow, frankly. I think was the latest we've heard. We hope to get it by. When we get that, we'll circulate it to the board and talk about next steps with that as well.
Okay.
That's it for my report today.
Okay, that brings us to trustee Corish with the sewer department, village grants, and the ZBA.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll start with the sewer department for month of January. Total gallons received in the month was 1,691,000 gallons. 20,800 gallons of sludge were removed. The DMO reports were forwarded on 2/5. Suffolk County DHS inspection date, the next inspection will be, it's 2/11, which I guess was today. And New York State DEC inspection as always is open. We have no complaints for the month of January. Summary of operations, wastewater treatment plant running well under all permitted levels. They're now operating just 2 basins. All grease traps in the village were inspected and all but 2 are in compliance. These 2 businesses, they experienced blockages in their lateral lines to the main line. This resulted in the pumping of the respective grease traps, cleaning and cameraing the lines to the main, and all is working well again. Mike Roth, who is one of our operators, completed and passed phase 2 laboratory certification as part of his progress to becoming a fully certified sewer plant operator. I'd like to offer my congratulations to Mike. He's doing this in record time. He might even beat Frank Scavone becoming fully certified. It's really great. It's not easy. It's a very demanding. Exercise. Benson Contracting were out to reset and calibrate the dry well. That all worked well. And the flow from December to January decreased by 377,000 gallons. Also later on this evening, as part of our agenda, we'll have a resolution to hire Mike Nooker as a full-time sewer plant laborer, which is wonderful. Another young gentleman, which are delighted to have him down the sewer plant. As far as grants go today, there'll be a resolution tonight. We're submitting a grant for request for $31,000 to the East Hampton CPF Water Quality Committee to begin the design engineering to connect the schools to the sewage treatment plant. This is something down the road, but we want to get this going and keep building on the momentum that we have. So that application needs to be in by the 17th. I think it's all ready to go. We have the resolution tonight. Moving on to the ZBA, things at the ZBA are working very well. I think that board really operates well. And so I have no issues there to report, Mayor, and that concludes my report for the evening. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to trustee Plum with Public Works, Board of Historic Preservation and Architectural Review.
Thank you, Mayor. From the Yardley, tree trimming continues on all streets. Highway Department continues to patch and repair roads as needed. Street signs cleaned, repaired, replaced. 2 weather events that require roads to be treated with salt and sand. Maintenance on trucks continues. All trucks have been power washed following snow events. The Highway Department collected residential Christmas trees for disposal. Litter collection continues throughout the village, and they assisted the harbor master with the removal storage shed, container shed, to prepare for the delivery of a new shed. I think that's on lower.
I'll fill you in on that.
All right, and while we're on the subject of budget, D Yardley is gonna be asking for a new dump truck or two. And so I just wanna put that out there. He'll present at our budget meeting. But the ones we have are pretty old, and once they get too old, they kind of nickel and dime you to death. You have to fix them. So anyway, that'll be coming up. The HPRB, a couple people terms are up this June, and we will probably be seeing some new faces on that board. And which is good. And then also Mary Ann is giving me the update on the Environmental Advisory Committee with props. And this, to skip the stuff preservation and presentation, essentially 100 million plastic utensils are used in the US every day. This is a sample of like something that was thrown into a bag when someone ordered a taco or something. This much stuff. So, oh, and these two, I guess, came from the same place. Anyway, the idea is that you post, the restaurants don't give you this unless you ask for it. And this has been passed in New York City, in Westchester County, LA, and East Hampton Village have all done this. It can make a big difference. Even though our president has chosen to go back to plastic straws in the federal government, we can still do our part. Composting, Hampton Bays Transfer Station is starting accepting food scraps as pilot, and hopefully that'll be year round to help with the waste. And the Carbon Crew is this, they now have online with hundreds of kids getting community service hours and essentially environmental education, techniques, methods, whatever, of climate action. And that's my report.
All right, just a couple of things I would add is the clock. I don't know if anybody in the village has noticed which has been I've been on this for the last year and a half. The clock that's by the watch case factory directly across from the beer and soda has been broken for, I don't know how many years, but we finally have got the clock is repaired. It's working. It's lit up, has a backlight on it at night so you can see it. So that's been done. The clock that goes on the municipal building, I don't know if it's been delivered yet. It was supposed to be here February 4th. But I don't think we've got it yet. So I got to find out where that is. Once it comes here, then D will have it installed. So looks like we're getting back on time with those two things. So thank you, Trustee Plum. That brings us to Trustee Kane with the Building Department, Harbors and Docks, and the Harbor Committee.
Great. I'm gonna start with Harbors and Docks. Harbor Master Bory and Duryea completed work on the dinghy dock, so they'll be ready for the season. When it starts, doesn't feel like the boat season right now yet, but they got all that work done. And then just to follow up on Trustee Plum, that one container that we had was really in bad shape and was leaking a lot. So the marine equipment that we had in there, as well as once we take the ice eaters back, which, you know, we want to maintain them, the new shed is supposed to be arriving by the end of this month. So that was all the timing on that, and they were working together. And then with regard to the ice eaters, you know, given the cold weather that we've talked about with the drill that they've had, we've been using them and they've been very helpful in preserving the pilings. So doing the job that we need them to do, because this was really the first time in several years that we had ice outside the breakwater.
How
So
were let me ask you a question. The pile mate, you know, yeah, that they float up and down. Have they been working and doing the job?
Yeah.
They're pretty,
and so that's the thing, and
that
in
saves on
regards,
energy,
they're
right? That saves on energy.
not that expensive. It's just, you know, every year you gotta go out, you gotta put them on. And this year we put them on and we really needed them.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're gonna be replacing all those pilings. We do have to replace one piling that was noticed before we put them on.
The pile mates on.
Yeah, so, you know, this is the preventative equipment that we just need to be thoughtful. And now that we have the new technology and it works.
And it saves on energy because you're not,
Right, you're not
Everything.
pumping.
Right.
But is
You know, I
there a
haven't-
reason- is there a reason we're not moving forward with the icebreakers
No, we are,
everywhere?
yeah, and,
To get rid of the pumps.
and the whole idea is, you know, you're not using them all the time. They only
Yeah.
go on when you need them.
Right.
You know, so that's the whole piece. So for everyone to be aware of that. Also, the harbor masters plan to return the marine patrol boat that's been wrapped, weather permitting. Probably the beginning of March is when they'll look to do that. So just to be aware, because if there's a need, we want to have the higher powered, faster boat in the water. And then to give everyone an update, the reservations continue to be coming in strong. We've been filling all the vacant slips and moorings. We've actually gone to now the change request list and the wait list. We are awaiting payment from one resident dock slip, 2 resident moorings, 2 outer mooring field moorings, and then 5 non-resident moorings. So if those payments don't come in, then we'll keep going to the list. So just for everyone to be aware. And as far as revenue, we are ahead of where we were last year. So if you look at the month of January, this January versus last January, we're ahead by about 5%. And then year to date, we're ahead by about 7%. So just to give you those numbers for this year, for 2025, it's $1,098,294. So just to give you a sense of where that is. And for the building department, continue to be busy. Actually, the revenue for the month of January, this is for 25, was 88,701. That's 34% below January of 2024. But as we know, it's seasonal. It's when a job gets complete, when people are coming in for permits. And as we heard from the treasurer, we know for the whole year, we're in a good spot, but just this single month. There were 62 inspections that were done in the month of January. So even though it's cold weather, they're out there working hard. We had 10 notices of violation and 19 certificate of occupancy. When you look at fire marshal, he was quite busy with 14 fire safety inspections. There was 1 fire prevention presentation that was made, 10 notices of violation that were issued, and 1 special event application review, 8 tree removal inspections. So as people can see, we're really, working on that when and where we should. There were 0 rental permits that were applied for, and then 0 owner occupied permits. And then for the Harbor Committee, they continue to be busy. We did have the building inspector attend their last meeting just to discuss the process that goes through with applications. And other than that, we're in good shape.
Okay, I need a motion to accept the department reports.
I'll move it.
Motion by Deputy Mayor Hay, need a second.
Second.
Seconded by Trustee Corus. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. That brings us to our public comment section, 15-minute public session. Input for comments and questions, limit 3 minutes per speaker concerning the treasurer's report or any of the department reports that you just heard. Does anybody like to comment? Yes, ma'am, could you come forward and let us know who you are and where you live?
No, it's up above you.
Okay, you could just speak, it should pick it up.
So Helen Roussel. I live in Sag Harbor. And I don't know if I'm allowed to, but I wanted to comment about a building code that was changed. And it was changed, and actually the buildings department weren't aware of it. I mean, nobody was aware of it, and it's to do with the new law that's so brilliant, the accessory dwelling unit law that was so fantastic, that was really celebrated because it meant that the spare buildings on properties could be used as a unit, so we love this because I'm a caretaker for a relative, and so it was perfect, I can use the accessory dwelling unit. So we went ahead and we were told by the building department, yeah, go ahead, it's fantastic new law, and it's really gonna help out a lot of families, we're gonna get more, local people, we're not gonna, because let's face it, the housing is skyrocketed, it's insane. We have hundreds of massive, great big like structures and nobody there. Nobody at the school. These people just use them on the weekend, and mostly just use them on the weekend. So finally, there is a law to allow, smaller apartments, like a tiny house. We were going to do like a totally renewable apartment, carbon negative, really cool. So suddenly we put in for our building permit, and suddenly the building inspector called me and said, guess what? We just realized that the property has to be more than 70 foot wide at the front. So it doesn't matter about the side of it is, a few hundred feet, but at the front, it has to be 70, and nobody knew about it. And of course, hardly any properties in this town have that, especially not in the village here or anything like that. So then all our plans and everything, because the building department, don't forget, the building department told us we could just go ahead. And so we did the septic design, we got one of the new, because it's a defunct old septic system from 1910, I think, something. So we were going to put in a brand new septic system, because of the new room that we were having, but all of that now is out the window. Because of this sudden appearance, this sentence in the code that was not there before. And I was actually here, I was here when it was the public input, and I was here, I think I was presenting on the oyster reef, the oyster in, and we were presenting on that. So I happened to be here by chance to hear about it. And I definitely did not hear about that limit that was sneaked in apparently later, not sneaked in, okay. It wasn't part of the public input, and I just want to appeal to you to make this available to people in this town.
What I would say to you is, for the last probably month and a half, we've been discussing this, and we know it's a problem. We're aware of it, and we're trying to work through the code, because under those parameters, nobody would be able to do it. I mean, I don't know if a lot, very
Some
few.
can, but
And here's the problem. This gets to a bigger issue. And if you've been around me, and you've been listening to me speak in public to people, we have a problem in this village. The problem is, and I've been saying it for years, our base is eroding. We're losing people. They're selling their homes because they're faced with, they have an extended family. Their property's worth millions of dollars. They sell their home, somebody buys it, like you say, they make it, either they're not living there full time, or it's an LLC that rents it out in the summer. So we're losing our base. So we need to, I feel, and I'll make this argument in public to anybody, we need to help people like yourself, even like me, that has I have an extended family that lives with me. I might be living in the ADU in the back, for all I know. So I think we need to, but there's questions of, there's always questions of setbacks and density, and we're gonna look at that, right? We have to, take that into consideration. But we've talked about this, coming up with some formula to make that possible. So if your lot is a certain size, you're allowed an ADU up to a certain square footage. So we're definitely working on that. We'll be working
we very much appreciate, we've had feedback from some of the architects because they've been working on projects like yourself. And we hope to have something by the next meeting that will be a draft. But we need to be speaking with all the trustees so that everyone understands that we can come up with a proper solution. And, you know, as with all these things, every time we introduce a new thing, there's a trial period, we learn about it, and then we may have to make amendments. And so
I just
that's,
wondered how it got in there in the first place, because it wasn't in there originally.
It was in there all
It
along.
was in
And the
there
thing
all
about
along.
legislation, it's always complicated. It's never easy.
Yeah, it wasn't in the, I don't remember it in the public input discussing that.
Do you-
But the legislation, that was always in the legislation.
Yeah, isn't it funny that the builder didn't know about it either?
Have you seen our book of legislation?
Pardon?
Have you seen our book of legislation, our building code? It's hundreds and hundreds of pages of interrelated sections. Not always easy to keep track of all of it.
Oh, I see. It's separate, you separated it.
Because it may be residual from, the village is R20. And it may be that 70 is a minimum width for an R20 lot. I don't know that.
no, it's 100. It's 100 feet is,
Yeah,
is the current 100, but the 70% piece was that to go for all, not just for the
70%
width.
or 70 feet?
70%, which because it was
Of-
100,
of
that's
the-
how
of the
you
lot
get
width.
to.
Okay,
the
I got
lot.
you.
But it's
Yeah.
not just the lot.
Yeah.
width.
Of the required lot.
Lot
width,
width,
Yeah.
which is 7.
Okay, so that's how it comes to that
So you
number.
understand the complications
Um,
of
But
that.
you do.
And it
But-
doesn't always play out, it doesn't always play out in legislation.
But
Lee.
this
Here's
is,
the thing.
We're not gonna solve it here.
Council makes a good point. You could, if you wanted to continue the process, ask for a variance to the ZBA.
I know, but that's gonna take about 6 months, though, isn't it?
No, it does not take 6 months in this village.
Listen, I want to make it easier for people to do what you're trying to do, to keep their family members, to have an ADU that's affordable, housing for somebody. I'm a big proponent of that. I think that if we need to change the code, we should do that. If we need to amend it or make it, we
and
need
the
to do
reason
that.
we went from 600 minimum square feet down to the 280 was to make it doable, right? So, thank you very much for coming
I
and
mean, I'll
sharing.
tell you
And it's-
personal.
It's a priority of ours.
A personal story, okay? Somebody who was two members of the fire department, a member of the ambulance corps, okay, extended family. The parents are getting to retirement age. They couldn't resist. They got a big number for their house. They sold it. Everybody moved away. The one person who was an active member of the fire department is now living in Mattituck. So this is not an uncommon story in the village, and our base is eroding. We need to do something to sustain that.
Could we have it, is this on as a resolution, discussion item for the next meeting? Can we?
We're
It would
hoping,
be required to be an introduction for.
Yeah.
a local
we have to
law.
introduce,
Is there draft legislation?
Liz has begun it, but we wanted,
To me.
You want everybody's
no,
input.
but I wanted to be able to sit down and talk with everybody and we don't have.
We
it
haven't
yet.
made any changes to it. We're just
No, no, no.
identifying the problems with it.
Is it possible for our next meeting?
Let's
to
just
at
talk
least
about the
introduce-
process, so you can be aware too. At the next meeting, best case scenario, we'll introduce legislation amendments to address the issue. We will not be able to vote on it then. It'll take at least another month with public input. The following,
Right?
Yes,
yes, which would be then the April meeting is the earliest we could possibly vote on it to approve. Is that correct, Liz?
Correct.
Just so you have a perspective on the timing, it's going to take at least that long to change the code if we choose to change the code.
and that's why as much work as we all can be doing before the next meeting, when we can.
I want to mention that Anthony had brought this up.
Yep.
I don't know if it was last meeting or the meeting before.
Couple meetings ago.
That's what we
So-
started working on it.
Right, that's when we started looking at the code to
Yeah.
take a closer look and realize that we have issues. So we need to come up with a solution.
Can we have a chance to review that before it comes up in front of a public
I'm not
hearing?
gonna put anything before a public hearing unless we all review it and we're all comfortable with it.
Okay,
That's what-
because we'll need a little time to do that.
100%.
But it's gonna get, we're gonna have this discussion. What do we want the village to look like?
Yeah.
Moving forward. So. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Rosenberg's online.
Go ahead.
And Anthony's here.
Wait, Anthony's,
Oh, sorry.
Anthony?
So Anthony Vermigos, 68 Union Street. Just want to follow up on what Helen said, because I'm an architect.
okay,
Happy to be working on a little project like this. So just to give you a little bit of the background here is, we actually went to Architectural Review Board thinking that we were good. You know, this is an existing building, 400 square foot former garage. No requirements to change the footprint of the building, no need to change the envelope of the building, just cosmetic, changing old non-historic windows, residing, that kind of thing. So it's really just a cosmetic conversion, not requiring any variances, just A or B approval. So we got our A or B approval, and it was only as we were going through the home stretch here, getting our final building permit, that this section of the code came up. And I'm gonna read it to you. It's all other dimensional nonconformities shall not be less than 70% of the required lot width requirements. I mean, you know, just looking at this from a layperson's standpoint, what does that even mean?
It's
You
tough.
know?
It's
And
tough.
that's why I
Yeah.
think nobody picked up on
Yeah.
this when it originally went through discussion.
And this
We
is a
didn't provide the
pre-existing structure
implications of-
that's already on the
Yeah.
property. It's just
Yeah,
being converted
it's
to
an
living
existing
space.
structure that's being
I could tell you, Anthony, that 10 years ago, I've been going to these board meetings for a long time, since I was chief in the fire department. And I sat back there and there was a point in this village where they were taking just a simple water line out of an accessory dwelling structure. They didn't want anything in it. It was not to be used at all, habitable for any type of living space or. So we've come a long way. We're working on getting these kinks out.
Yeah, I know, and I think it was just, we were so excited about having this new law. I think this one little thing just got overlooked, and, you know, it's something that needs to be rectified. And Helen is certainly the perfect example of somebody this law is designed to help, and, you know, hopefully we can help her out, and a lot of people like her.
Quick question, just you may know the answer. Is the accessory structure on the main house allowed to share a septic, an IA system, or they need separate ones?
They can, yeah, it depends
The
on
number.
really the project.
Okay.
But I think, Helen, did we end up with yours
Aiden.
sharing for the main house as well?
If,
Or did we do a separate one?
No, sharing, which means,
Yeah.
which is good, because it means that we would get now one of the. you know,
IA
sharing the
systems.
environment, you know.
Yeah.
So it's a win-win.
Yeah, yeah.
So-
Get the main house on the
IA
as
system,
well, which
yeah,
would be
that
good.
was
Right.
roundabout way I was asking that question.
right, because then it's gonna be utilized more, which is really what you
need
do
that.
want with
Mhm.
these new systems. You just have to make sure if you're adding a new bedroom, that you're putting the right size in,
Gotcha. Yeah.
right? So,
Thank you, Anthony.
Anthony,
Thank
by the
you.
way, thanks for shoveling the snow around the clock.
No problem.
Oh, we did, really?
Yes, sorry.
Nice.
and you did a good job.
Anybody else? Okay.
Hello.
Oh, we have, okay.
Hi, Lily Fell, 187 Germain Avenue. Just a couple housekeeping things. I was wondering if we could get a sign back at Havens Beach, please. Because I think it's sad not to have a sign and the structure's there.
Didn't even know, okay, no.
In saying Havens Beach?
Yeah, because there used to be one and then it disappeared.
Huh.
Any thoughts?
I don't know what was the circumstances behind that. I'll have to look into it.
Might be nice. Next is on the Long Wharf in the dock by where the American Beauty is.
Mhm.
There are two lights that are not covered, and I don't think they're compliant with village code. They're on 24 hours a day, and there's no covering, so they're glaring out.
I'd have to look into that also. It could be a safety issue, so.
Okay, thank you. And then the last, I know trustee Kane was talking about the growth of the reservations for the boats for the upcoming season. And last year, I think we were up 20,000 gallons from the pump out, given that we had a second boat, which was really great. And I think the numbers started to reflect in Havens Beach and the surrounding waterways. But given the increase in reservations, I hope we'll keep that second pump out boat.
Well, you have to understand what I'm saying. The good news is everyone's coming back. There's no new docks or spaces. We haven't gone up in the number of boats. It's just the dollars that are coming in are ahead of last
Gonna
year,
go 30% increase,
dollar wise.
yeah.
We don't have any new spaces. We
Okay.
have, as you know, we haven't increased the docks. Once we look to do a dock, that will be different. That will be next season, that will have an increase.
Got it. And then just looking forward, which sort of combines septic and the docks, I'd love for you to consider putting a self pump out. Which could be
It's
really.
definitely something that we are very seriously looking at. I can't give you an answer until we really get the design and have go through the whole process,
And I
but
think with this, water the Restitution Act or the Water
Mhm.
Act, given with the additional money from the sales tax, that could be a grant that we could apply for. So just some consideration,
Yep.
please.
right, if you have any, love to follow up with you on talking about that.
That would be super. Thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
work.
You said you had somebody on Zoom, Kate?
Yes, Eileen Rosenberg.
Hi, good evening. I just had a question about the traffic study process. From what I understand, Deputy Mayor Hay, the traffic study is being conducted now, and once they determine certain plans, that will then be introduced to the board. Um, at what point does public input impact the traffic study itself? Is it during? I mean, has there been any public input, or does that happen after the board has reviewed everything?
It'll happen coincident with that, but there isn't a traffic study being done right now per se. This is the county's project. They've issued a preliminary design document already, took public input on that last June. So we're working off the county's designs.
Mhm.
And nothing has changed in their design to date, except we've recommended two things. One is to relocate the entrance of Mash Hashemite Park and exit to make it a little safer, to take it off of the intersection. It's right in the middle of the intersection now. In fact, what they've designed blocks the intersection with a raised island as well. And so they agree that it's a good idea to move the entrance to County Road 79. So not truly a study, but we've been working with them, and they've been working on some preliminary design drawings. They haven't been drawn yet. Really rough sketches have been done by people, but not by our traffic consultant yet, and not by the county yet. And then in addition, there's currently now some relatively unsafe parking, right angle parking off of County Road 79 near the playground at Mash Park. The way the county had designed the project, sidewalks and bike lanes would take away that. But what they recommended was to design some parking there. So they did some drawings for that. We're evaluating them now, just looking at them. We have questions we're going to ask of them. That may or may not stay in, who knows? And then the thing that we're bringing to the table in addition to those two issues is we're asking them to look at more robust biking markings, lanes, to encourage more bike traffic and more safe bike traffic along there as well. So again, not truly a study, but issues and the county's been very receptive working with us on these ideas that we're presenting to them. At some point, we will have, preliminary design drawings from the county or from our own consultant to help communicate what the recommendations are from the county and that we've made to the county and that they're considering. And we'll bring those to the board and the public, but we're still in this preliminary discussion phases now. Keep in mind, this project is not intended to go to bid until 2026. So we're still very much in the preliminary phase.
Okay, thank you so much for clarifying that. Thank you.
Okay, so that ends our public comment section. That brings us to continued public hearing. A local law to amend local law, amending the village code, chapter 85 assemblies, mass public. Do you want to just go over this really quickly,
Sure,
Councilwoman?
this is a continued public hearing from last month. This is gonna replace the existing code section for assemblies, mass assemblies, and replace it with a special events law, with some differences that include, that an assembly will include, activities, an assembly of persons both indoors and partly outdoors, so that's a change. It'll be for 50 or more people instead of, I believe, 75 it was.
Yep.
The application timeframe has changed from, we used to have 30 days, now we would like it to be submitted no less than 60 days before the date of the expected event to allow this process of review to take place at the village. it's going to be issued by the Village Board of Trustees or the Village Administrator. There's also an appeal provision. If it's denied, it gets appealed to the Village Board of Trustees. There's also 2 special events permitted in the residential zoning districts. I believe there used to be 1, and now it's been increased to 2 events. And in all other zoning districts, there's 3 per calendar year. And the rest of the sections are quite similar to some of the existing restrictions in our Mass Assembly law. It's currently stated.
Okay, do we,
Can I just add, it also just gives a little bit more, it gives the building department and the inspector a little bit more variety in what qualifies as special events that can be approved under the code. Was before was strictly a numbers game of 75 people triggered a special event permit. And sometimes there are certainly in the village business district, there was requests for, it was requests for special events that didn't involve 75 people, but that did require a permit for different reasons because it was outside of the use of that premise under the code. So this gives the building department a little bit more flexibility to approve some of these events.
Right, and also one of the other changes I forgot to mention was they can take place over a period of more than 1 day, because that was strictly construed in our last code, so.
Is there a maximum number of days?
No, it's discretionary by the board. There's a maximum number of events, but there's not a maximum number of days. Just
So-
more than 1 day.
so we already have this open, right? Do we have any,
There's also, you just have to hear from the public, and then if the board so chooses, you can adopt it.
do we have any public comment? Anybody who wishes to comment on this? Anybody on Zoom? Okay, I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
You made the motion? Okay, we'll make the
I'm
motion.
sorry.
Bob already second. Bob's ready.
Yeah, he's
I
ready.
did make the motion.
Okay, motion by Deputy Mayor Hay, second by Trustee Plum. Okay, so I need a motion to adopt.
I'll move it.
Motion by Deputy Mayor Hay,
I'll second.
seconded by Trustee Kane. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Again, everything comes before the board, so if we have any questions or if we don't want to approve it, it's up to us. That brings us to discussion items, which we don't have any.
Can I just make one question? It's up to us, but the idea too is that there will be a committee with the chief, the inspector, maybe a board member, the clerk. When these applications come
Have
in,
more time to review.
yeah, they'll review them. There's a calendar that they'll put them on. There's a map that they would put them on to make sure that there's not too much overlap on these before they come to us. That's why we've asked for the 60 days as well. So they can have their time to review them, to make sure that, that things are in order before it comes to us.
Okay, so that brings us to action items, resolution of the Board of Trustees, request for proposal, resolved that the mayor, Board of Trustees hereby authorize and direct the village clerk to advertise for, it says, set 6 channel markers, 10 regulatory buoys, 3 speed buoys, and check the 4 village moorings and add mooring balls in March. Remove.
So this is just, sorry, for last year, we've had Ken Beek do it, but in order to comply with,
We're gonna put it out to bid.
We're
Yes.
That's a bid just to, comply with our procurement policy.
Okay.
Very good.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Kane, seconded by Trustee Corish. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Resolution to authorize the mayor to execute any and all documents pertaining to the Town of East Hampton Community Preservation Fund Water Quality Improvement Program. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Corish,
Second.
seconded by Trustee Kane. This is what we spoke about.
We spoke about earlier,
With
yeah.
the school.
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Resolution authorizing payment to the town of Southampton for the 2025 assessment services for the East Hampton side of the village of Sag Harbor. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Motion by Deputy Mayor Hay, second.
Second.
Seconded by Trustee Plum. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Resolution establishing a fee for the review of grease trap drawings and oversight of the grease trap installation. This is a escrow fee that we're proposing for $5,000 for our engineer to review the drawings of the any proposed grease trap.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by trustee Corr, second.
Second.
Seconded by trustee Kane. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Resolution for Mayor Gardella to sign the proposal with IMEG for review of proposed sanitary sewer connections and grease trap installation. This kind of ties into what we just approved.
Yep.
I have a motion.
So moved.
Motion by trustee Corr, second.
Second.
Seconded by trustee Kane. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Resolution for Mayor Gardella to sign an agreement with New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. This is NYSERDA for Clean Energy Communities building upgrades for the grant award of $50,000.
I'll move it.
Motion by Deputy Mayor Hay, second.
Second.
Seconded by trustee Plum. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Resolution appointment of Kathleen Guigan as alternate member to the HPARB. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by trustee Plum, second.
Second.
Seconded by trustee Kane. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Okay, so we have a resolution to award request for proposal for construction management for the village sewer expansion K and L. We have just gotten back the proposals. We had a discussion about this. We're going to call in a couple of the firms and we have some questions to ask them before we make a decision, and that should help happen relatively shortly so we can proceed. So we're gonna just hold off on this for now. That brings us to resolution authorizing mayor to sign agreement with Clarity Benefits Solutions. And this is, I believe, an administrative agreement for the village police and dental, right? The police department and dental. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Motion by Deputy Mayor Hay, second.
Second.
Seconded by trustee Corr. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Resolution authorizing the mayor to sign an agreement with Harbor Tours Incorporated. This is for the American Beauty 2.
So moved.
Motion by trustee Corr, second.
Second.
Seconded by trustee Kane. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Resolution authorizing the mayor to sign an agreement with Yacht Hampton. This is another charter that we've had experience with. Do I have a
So
motion?
moved.
Motion by trustee Kane, second.
Second.
Seconded by trustee Plum. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. This is a resolution amending outdoor dining application submission. This is a fee for an application for outdoor dining, which is $250. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Motion by Deputy Mayor Hay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by trustee Kane. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Resolution appointing Dominic Cucker to the position of full-time sewer plant laborer.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by trustee Corish,
Second.
seconded by Deputy Mayor Hay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Resolution of the Board of Trustees approving appointment of Edwina Von Gaal as consultant to the Environmental Advisory Committee.
I'll move that.
Motion by trustee Plum. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Deputy Mayor Hay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. So congratulations. Did she leave?
She had
She had to go.
Oh.
But she
So-
said to apologize, she just had to get home at a certain time.
So I had a conversation, we had a good conversation this past week, and Edwina is going to come to the board meetings and do a little, just like you did with the plastic forks and spoons and stuff, Bob. She's gonna do a little education for us. So that'll be part of our board meeting each month. Edwina will come and will educate us as to what's good and what's bad for the environment. So
Good.
just make note of that. Okay, this is a resolution, the Board of Trustees for approval date for the village elections between 9 AM and 9 PM on June 17, 2025. And to advertise, it says, declaring vacancies and to advertise all notices of village election. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by trustee Kane, second.
Second.
Seconded by Deputy Mayor Hay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Carrie Garapi, Secretary of the Sag Harbor Volunteer Ambulance Corps, advised the mayor and board of trustees the following officers effective February 19th, 2025. President will be Steve Hatfield, Vice President Melissa Hessler, Treasurer Kristen Pettigrew, Secretary Carrie Garapi, Director Edmund Downs, Director Mark Poitras, and Director Robert Capazola. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Motion by Deputy Mayor Hay, second.
Second.
Seconded by Trustee Kane. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Robert Drake, Chief of Police, requests authorization for J&V Auto Salvage Incorporated to remove and discard the following vehicles in the amount of $1,400. This is a 2004 Dodge pickup truck and a 2009 Mercedes C30. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Corr, second.
Second.
Seconded by Deputy Mayor Hay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Authorization to refund the following small claims assessments. 2024, 2025. Hara and Dem Marian for $2,361.23. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Motion by Deputy Mayor Hay, second.
Second.
Seconded by Trustee Kane. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Melissa Hessler, President of the Sag Harbor Ambulance Corps, requests authorization to advertise for per diem paramedics on the Suffolk County Regional Emergency Medical Services Council of New York, which is REMSCO, and Fire and Rescue Emergency Services, which is FRES websites.
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Corr, second.
Second.
Seconded by Deputy Mayor Hay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Michael J. Geyer, First Assistant Chief of the Sag Harbor Fire Department, requests permission to run for the position of Chief of the Sag Harbor Fire Department in April 2025 election, as Michael lives outside of the incorporated village of Sag Harbor. I'll make the motion on that.
I'll second.
Seconded by Trustee Plum. All those in favor?
Aye.
So I have a question. There's one chief, even though there are 5 different departments. but
Yes.
how's
So we
this-
have, the way it's set up, we have the chief of the department, who
Right.
is the head of
All of them.
everybody.
Okay.
Then we have a first assistant chief, which assists him, and he has certain duties such as keeping up with equipment. And then we have the second assistant chief, who also has certain duties that he does to help the chief.
Yeah, thanks.
So we have 3, but one's in charge and the other 2 are assistants. So because if you don't live in the village, you have to get approval by this board to run.
Okay.
And is it for 1 year?
You can run for, there's a chief selection every year. So if somebody runs against you, it could be supplanted. Usually, if you do the job, it's a 2-year, 2-year, and 2
Okay.
years. So it's almost like a 6-year commitment. But we've had chiefs, like in my case, when I came in as the second assistant chief, the chief that was at the time only did 1 year. And then he left. And then the next chief only did 1 year. Then he left. I did the 2 years as chief. They had other commitments that they had to take. So I served 4 years total. I got fast tracked. That's how that worked.
Good training for this. right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Big pay raises too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Just put another 0 in front of the 0.
That's it.
Gary Wilson Jr., Second Assistant Chief of the Sag Harbor Fire Department, requests permission to run for the position of First Assistant Chief of the Sag Harbor Fire Department in April 2025. Same thing as Gary lives outside the incorporated village. He needs permission from the board, and I'll make that motion.
Second.
Second.
Seconded by Deputy Mayor Hay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Richard Chivoni, Sag Harbor Fire Department Secretary, requests permission for Kiara Williams to be moved from active probationary to full active member status. I'll make this motion. Kiara is the daughter of Doug Williams, who was a member of our fire department. And he's left the fire department, and her mother is Kelly Bailey, who happens to be a member of the department, is also on the Board of Wardens. So this is, as in most things with the fire and emergency services, it's generational.
Absolutely.
So now we have another generation. And again, these are the people that we're trying to keep in our village. And whatever we could do code wise, or, like this ADU law, I strongly believe we need to do something to help them stay. So I'll make the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Deputy Mayor Hay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. This is a special event and special use permits. Lisa Stenson Desamores, President of the Sag Harbor Hills Improvement Association, requests permission to have their 75th annual dinner dance at Havens Beach on July 12th, 2025, from 6 to 11 p.m. Was there a question on this, Kate, you said, or?
Lisa did answer them. They requested set up a couple days early for the tent. There was a question about the timing. Lisa is on that she can answer any questions that we may have.
I don't have any questions. I'm fine with it, but does anybody else have any questions or?
So from 6 to 11.
Yes, the event, and it's actually our 75th anniversary celebration. It's not the 75th annual event. So we're very excited about
Congratulations.
opportunity. Thank you.
I just have a
To
question.
celebrate our community since 1950.
I have one question.
That's amazing.
Yes, Mayor
Am I
Gardella,
invited?
how are
Am I
you?
invited? Am I
Yes,
invited
you
to
are
this?
my guest.
So
I'll
make a motion. Motion by trustee Corr, second,
Second.
seconded by trustee Kane. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. That brings us to approve.
Much
the payment-
appreciated. Thank you.
You're welcome. Approve the payment of the bills. We have warrant 33 in the amount of $648,368.66. Warrant number 34 in the amount of $121,139.92. Warrant number 36 in the amount of $568,995.28. Do I have a motion to approve the payment of the bills?
Was it?
Motion by Deputy Mayor Hay, second.
Second.
Seconded by trustee Corus. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. That brings us now to public comments, 15-minute public session input for comments. Questions, limit 3 minutes per speaker. Anybody like to, yes, Lily,
Sorry,
sorry.
completely fell again. I'm wondering if it's possible to get two pedestrian crosswalk signs up on the corners of Clinton and also Atlantic by the elementary school, the middle school and the high school. As you know, I live there on the corner, so I frequently sit and have coffee in the morning and watch what's going on. Probably 3 times a week, I watch children kind of in a dicey situation, crossing the road. Also, I watch people drive by, and generally, every third person or 1 in 4 is texting. And I think if we put these, and I've seen it before, I dragged one up. If we put these pedestrian crosswalks, it slows them down when they're going around the bend, and they have to pay attention.
Can I ask you a question? Is this in a already existing crosswalk?
It is.
And what time are you noticing this? Because we have traffic control officers.
Not,
They're usually there from when the school starts to about 10 o'clock. And then they're also there when school at recess for like an additional 2 hours.
that's over, I believe, on Hampton Road.
On
outside the
Division,
elementary
And on
school.
Division, they have that.
These are in different, is this over by, you're saying Clinton and,
This is where Clinton comes out onto Germain. Say if you're coming up from, you cross over Division and this, if you're heading towards 114. You go up Division and then you take that right angle where Atlantic comes out.
Mm-hmm.
And then Clinton is that one-way street that
right,
comes.
right.
The back corner of the elementary school.
So I
Yeah.
often watch kids and adults and
Yeah.
teachers try and cross, and it's really dicey.
It's a wide street there.
Right.
It's a wide street.
And this is during those hours and there's no,
This is
really?
always,
Or all the
Yeah.
time? You're
There
shaking
isn't.
your head.
Yeah, I've never seen, I live right on the.
Yeah.
Right.
I've never seen any traffic control officers
never.
near Clinton.
No.
So they're over on Division.
So it's this
Is
intersection.
that one there?
It's this one
Yeah.
here.
It's also one of those cross
Yeah.
streets from going from 114 to Noyak Road. They go that way in both directions.
Correct. But in my opinion, if you put these obstacles there, it's gonna check people. So they can't just cut off the bend and keep going. They're gonna have to suddenly pay attention by these 2 obstacles in the road.
You have to be, listen, I've heard this argument before. And all I'm gonna say to the public is be very careful when you start to put obstacles and stuff in the road, when you create a hazard to prevent a hazard. That's all I'm saying. I would take a look at it and see what it looks like.
I would,
But I would also talk to Chief
Chief.
Drake and see if we can, the best thing is to have somebody there. To
Yes.
stop people. And that could be something that we need to talk to the school about, because our resources are limited. right now, we're dedicating TCOs as many, you know, we have limited resources also. So we've been partnering with the school to come in with some funding to help us boost the resources around the school.
And
So
yes, I agree with that.
that's a good argument for me to make to the school and say, look, we want more TCOs, we want more presence there, which I've said, I've been since last year when we sat down with them, that I wanted somebody at that intersection, that weird jog, that's germane, and I said it would be great to have a TCO there to control traffic, because kids are going to the park, they're walking,
And they agreed with that, right?
they agree.
I have to wonder if just to try it out first before adding the additional expense of the TCO. And this is something that would be there 24 hours a day, to give a little heads up, to slow people down. So instead of ramping up to 30 miles an hour around the bend while texting, they just check.
Right.
There used to be one down at the end of Division and Germain. And then that was pulled over. I dragged that up to the top by Clinton. And it was there until, I believe the snowplow took it out. Then I
Just a
dragged
sign that like in the middle of the crosswalk.
pedestrian, yeah, I mean, that would be helpful. It did.
I'll ask what the situation is with that, find out
Thank
for
you,
you.
I appreciate your time.
Thanks,
Thank
Doug.
Anybody else? Motion to adjourn?
So move.
Motion by trustee Corr, second.
Second.
Seconded by trustee Kane. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.